Hey YouTube, so today I'm going to be discussing something that I never thought I'd discuss on this channel or anywhere in general, and that's Linux, specifically what I think about it and what little experience I've had with it so far. So to give a little backstory, a couple months ago when the Windows 10 controversy was really heating up, which I can understand completely why people don't like Windows 10, because I do think that Microsoft has gone way too far in basically spying on its users and also forcing previous users of Windows to upgrade to it. So I think they have gone way too far in that. But despite me agreeing with that part of it, I do still like Windows 10 as an operating system. I think it's very stable, very reliable in general. I really haven't had any major issues with it. And despite me still liking it, this whole thing did start to grow my curiosity about Linux, because with all this going on, people were starting to talk more about people switching to Linux as an alternative to Windows. So it did kind of get me curious as to what people like so much about Linux. Because other than Android, which is, I guess, technically Linux, I've never really had an experience with it. I'll occasionally use it to recover a bad Windows installer or something, but I've never really used it enough to know what it's all about. So I decided to use this opportunity to finally learn Linux and get some experience with it. Because for one thing, I'm going into the IT field eventually, so I figure I might have to use it at some point. And plus, I just kind of thought I'd try something new in general, so decided to try it out, and believe it or not, I really like it. As you'll see in a minute, I've decided to go, after some trial and error, I've decided to go with Debian. Mate is my favorite distribution. And I'll go into more of why I like Debian later, but yeah, so. And I decided that this X201 here that you saw a few videos ago, I decided it would make a perfect Linux machine, because I don't use it as often as my other machines, but I still use it on a daily basis, so it'd just make a perfect Linux machine, I think. So, and as you can probably infer by what I've been saying, I'm not giving up Windows or anything like that, so if you're a Windows person, don't worry about that. I see the pros and cons of both. I can no longer consider myself a Windows fanboy. I've been accused of being a Windows fanboy in the past, but now that I use Linux, I can safely say that I have tried both, so. And I like both. I think there's a time and a place for both for sure. So, not as my main operating system, I wouldn't use it, but maybe eventually it'll go in that direction. But as a secondary operating system on a computer like this, it actually works out very well, I think. So anyway, let me go ahead and boot it up. And while it's booting up, I'll talk a little more about why I chose Debian. The most common distributions are probably Debian and Ubuntu. And also Mint. Mint I rolled out because my good friend Elmo3 was telling me about how it's got some security issues and stuff. So I decided against that. And I decided against Ubuntu because it's for two reasons. It's kind of overrated, I think. It's kind of overblown, really. And two, I hate the Unity desktop environment that it now uses, and a lot of other people do too. And I know there's Ubuntu Mate and all that, but I ultimately decided on Debian because it is kind of the original, what Ubuntu was based on. It's been around, it's one of the oldest Linux distributions, so I figured it would be, therefore would be one of the most stable. And the nice thing about Debian is that it gives you the option to use pretty much all the other desktop environments out there, if you want. So you can use Cinnamon, Mate, XFCE, whatever you want. So that's why I thought Debian would be the best overall. And by the way, even though I'm kind of explaining a little bit of it in this video about how it works and everything, I'm still not a Linux expert or anything. I still consider myself kind of a novice at this point. So if you want to know more about how Linux works and all that, if you're like me a couple months ago, sorry about that, guys. But anyway, as I was saying, basically if you want to know more about Linux, in terms of how it works and everything, then check out that video in the description. I think it's very helpful. But anyway, I wish I had seen that. Or it actually wasn't there when I first started messing with Linux. But anyway, so I thought what I'd do is just basically show you what I got on here and to talk about what I think are kind of the pros and cons of Linux, at least for me. Here's the hard drive there. I am going to get an SSD pretty soon. A 120 gig should be fine for a bedside laptop, I think. I've got Toontown Rewritten, which is a remake of a game from my childhood. I can't get it to work on Linux, even though it is supported. So I emailed a support person a while back, so hopefully he'll respond to me at some point and get that working. But anyway, I haven't really messed around with Wine or Crossover or anything like that, which is what lets you run Windows programs on Linux. Because from what I hear, it doesn't really work that well on Debian, which may be a consideration, I guess, if you're needing that. But for me, as little as I use it on here, I think it should be fine. And even if I was using Linux as my main operating system, which I'm not, but even if I was, I could probably get by with alternative software, with a few exceptions, like the main reason I stick with Windows is for programs like Sony Vegas Movie Studio, and there are certain Microsoft Office features I do like. So there are a couple of programs that I prefer to use Windows for, and then of course gaming like The Sims and stuff like that. Let's see, I got Google Chrome, LibreOffice comes with the Mate desktop, Synaptic, which is the Debian's package manager. So yep, just got the built-in stuff there. A couple games. I've got the old Ubuntu games. It's kind of cool. It reminds me a lot of the old Microsoft Entertainment Pack from the 90s. I also tried out Gut Simulator from Steam just to see how that would work, and it does not work. So I don't know if it's just this laptop or what, but oh well, I don't really play that on here anyway. Yep. GIMP also comes with Mate. I got Dropbox and Skype. Again, don't do much on here, but I do a couple of things. Bracero, which is a great ISO managing software, which I don't have a DVD drive on here, but I think it's got a virtual DVD program. Maybe, I don't remember why I put that on here, to be honest, but VLC, which is no matter what operating system you're on, it's a great media player program. FSLint, which is basically a cross between, if you're talking in terms of Windows, it's basically a cross between CCleaner and Recuva. GDebi, which is a package installer. Now let me go into the system monitor here. Yep, Debian 8.4 Jesse, which I think 8.4 just came out actually, if I'm not mistaken. 3.7 megs of RAM. So yeah, I guess I didn't really plan out this video, to be honest, but I guess let me just kind of show some things I like about Linux and talk a little bit about it. I like the Mate desktop. Usually this toolbar would be on the top, but to make it a little more Windows-like, I put it on the bottom. But I do like Mate, it's nice. The wireless on Linux can act a little weird at school, but I don't use this laptop at school anymore, so that's fine. And when it does work, it works fine. Let's see what else I want to talk about. You got your command prompt here, which is you have to manually update in Debian, which is nice actually. That would definitely get rid of the Windows Update complaint that some people have. I personally don't mind Windows updates that much, but I know a lot of people hate it, how it constantly updates on you. And I will admit that the forced update thing is not right. I don't agree with that at all. People should have a choice of whether to update or not, regardless of the situation. And that's what a lot of people like about Linux in general, is that it's kind of let you take control in a way. I mean, Windows is more, what's the word I'm looking for? It's more open, I guess you could say, than Mac is, but Linux is more open than even Windows. So, in terms of like letting you do what you want, update when you want, that kind of thing. Choose what desktop environment you want, that kind of stuff. I got Gparted, which is a very good management program, even if you don't use Linux at all in terms of an operating system. If you ever have to manage partitions on even older machines, Gparted is a great program that lets you do that. It lets you visually move partitions and stuff, so that's really nice. And it runs on a live CD just like other Linux distributions, which is another cool thing about Linux. There's a synaptic there. Installing packages in Linux can be kind of a pain, especially coming from Windows, but if you have something like GDebi, then you're good to go. GDebi basically just lets you do the old-fashioned, double click on the program, and that's all you have to do to install it. It installs for you. It's the control panel stuff, which again just kind of goes to prove the point about usability in Linux versus Windows. But don't get me wrong, I still love Windows, like I mentioned earlier. There's a time and place for everything, and for a lot of people, or power users is the word I was looking for earlier. If you're a real power user, then I could see why you'd want to use Linux, at least for certain computers. It's just such you take control, kind of. It's got all screensavers here. It's kind of cool. I think someone ported this to Windows. The X screensaver, I think is what it's called. So yeah, someone ported that to Windows, and it's really cool. Because I can't get screensavers to work in Windows 10. I guess maybe they're trying to phase that out. I'm not sure about that. Maybe that's just me. That's the equivalent of the control panel here. I'm just trying to think if anything else I can talk about. A lot of coming from Android actually did help a little bit with the Linux, with using Linux for the first time, because even though that Android is very much a spin-off of Linux in terms of, it's not, it's based on Linux, but it's still very modified compared to something like Debian. But that being said, coming from it did help me a lot when trying out Linux for the first time, because of stuff like root users. I have my phone rooted, so that the way, because whereas in Windows you have like an admin user, in Linux it's kind of the same thing, but you have a root user. It's the same. So that part of Android kind of helped me, and then also the way it handles packages is kind of the same, and just in general, Android, even though it's modified quite a bit, it's still Linux, and you can definitely tell when it comes to stuff like that. So that helped a little bit. But really, the fact that they let you use live CDs is pretty nice for trying it out for the first time. So yeah, let's see what else I can talk about here. Oh, another thing, drivers. That's probably the biggest thing coming from Windows. I believe Mac is the same way, but I don't really like Mac, so I'm not going to talk much about that anymore. But one thing I do like about Linux, actually, is the fact that drivers install automatically. And I know those of you who Linux users are probably laughing at me right now because I'm thinking that's such a unusual thing or something. But coming from Windows, having used Windows all my life, I'm so used to every time I install a computer, I got to install all the drivers. Go to the website, or I have my flash drive, but still, go to the website, download the newest version, download the driver, all that. Whereas with Linux, it's all built in. So even what they call non-free drivers, which basically means it's not open source, even they can be installed from the Debian installer if you want them to. So other than maybe a couple of extra things you might need on like the video driver, you really don't need to install drivers on Linux. And that's another thing that I've always liked about Android, since that's what I used first. Is the way they handle drivers. So that's kind of cool. So yeah, I guess there's nothing really else to show here. Just kind of wanted to give my... So yeah, I guess that's about it. I just kind of wanted to give my general thoughts and opinions on Linux, and prove to the world that I'm no longer a Windows fanboy. I still like Windows, don't get me wrong, and I still use it as my main operating system, but there is a time and place for everything, I think. And for a secondary computer like this, or maybe like a media server or a file server even, Linux is great. It really is. It gives you power over, it gives you more control over your own computer. It allows you to use something potentially a little lighter if that's what you're after. And yeah, it's just a great operating system in general. So, and the fact that it's open source is kind of cool too. I'm a big supporter. I'm not one of those people that only uses open source things, obviously, but at the same time, I am a huge supporter of the idea of open source. So, kudos to that. And yeah, so basically just kind of wanted to give my thoughts and opinions on Linux. And yep, it's a nice operating system for what it is. It's not for everybody, at least in terms of using it instead of Windows. At least for me, I'm still not to that point yet, but it's nice anyway. So, and there's definitely pros and cons of each that I've kind of gone over. So thank you guys for watching. I hope I didn't leave out anything important, but go watch that video if you're interested in learning more about it. And yeah, so see you guys next time. Bye.